Hi, I'm Femi and you're in the stream. Today, the campaign to guarantee young people in Nigeria a say in politics. Now, could quotas break down generations of political barriers? So online, this is a very vibrant conversation that the stream team have already been having with our Nigerian community. Lika Bilal is very well placed, digital producer, to tap into all of those conversations. What are you seeing?
Well, you know, this show is of note because it started with an online conversation. So I'll show you how it unfolded. We put out a call, as we do every day, for people to send their story ideas. And Zeki responded to the call on Facebook and Twitter, saying that he wanted us to cover this. It turned into a web piece and today's show. So if you're watching Zeki and anyone else, you can tweet us your questions and comments with hashtag AJStream.
Now joining us on set we have Nosarema Garrick, and she's co-founder of Vote or Quench. That's a civic engagement initiative encouraging young Nigerians to vote. Nosa, welcome.
Thank you.
And we will hear more from you in just a moment, so sit tight for now. Now, as Malika said, today's show came from you, our community, so keep those ideas rolling in, and you can share them with us really easily on facebook.com/AJStream. Pitch an idea, send us a suggestion, and it could end up being a future episode on the stream.
Hi, my name is Stella Damascus. I'm a Nigerian, an actor, a producer, a singer, a talk show host, a teacher. I love life and I love God. Hey, I'm in the stream.
So, what if Nigeria's majority ruled the country? In this case, it would be the youth, which make up a large segment of the population. Using the hashtag 30% or nothing, activists are calling for quotas to ensure their political representation, saying it's time for a generational shift. The average age of a delegate at the first national conference to discuss Nigeria's future was 61 years old. That's less than 5% of the attendees were actually youth representatives. Have a listen to what a politician in support of greater youth participation had to say to Lagos University students on August the 29th.
And yet, our political gerontocrats want to believe that me and you, we are still not yet capable of steering the ship of state. Do you agree with them? No! If you don't agree with them, say, yeah.
Okay, well, that went down well with that crowd. Are quotas, though, the key to bridging the generational gap? To help us talk about this, in Lagos, we have George Ali. He's founder of hashtag 30% or nothing. That's a hashtag campaign calling for a youth quota in government. In Abuja, Uche Chuta is an aspiring politician. In London, Faye Fawakimi is a blogger. So thanks all for joining. So let's get to this idea of what is youth when we're talking about politics in Nigeria. Uche, you're an aspiring politician. What is youth? What is young for Nigeria in the political field?
Well, we define young as 18 to 35. We have this youth charter. So let's say 18 to 35. I'm above 35, so I'm going to come into this conversation as an advocate for youth.
So you're old, right?
Yeah, I'm old.
Okay.
I'm 35, I'm going to be 36 soon, so I'm old.
All right, but you're advocating for people younger than yourself even to be able to go in for office. And so, George, this whole idea, this campaign that you started as a hashtag campaign, what was your idea of what would young be?
40 and below. Because although the African charter says that.
Ali, you're making me young now.
Yeah, it's 40 for politics. I mean, 40 and below.
All right.
For statistics and data, they might say 35.
All right. So let's to be on the safe side. Anybody under the age of 40. We're not talking teenagers here. We're talking about grown, mature adults. Malika.
Well, you said on the safe side is under 40. Some of our community members are saying that is not even happening in Nigeria as of now. So Pamela writes in, we don't even have the proper definition of youth when a 50-plus old man represents the youth in Nigeria. So Faye, have a listen to this video comment from someone who kind of echoes that sentiment.
The problem of the Nigerian youth has never been that of representation. We've always had that at the top. The problem has always been that of quality representation. A situation where we have a 52-year-old claiming to be a youth leader is unacceptable. Now, who is the Nigerian youth? That's what we should start with. When we define who the Nigerian youth is, then we define who the representative of the Nigerian youth should be.
So Faye, he's referencing the leader of the All Progressive Congress, the APC, who is reportedly 52, though some reports say 43. So what are your thoughts on that?
I think it's a problem, you know. I mean, as much as I'm not a fan of affirmative type of action, but I think, you know, it's a bit too cynical when 50-year-olds are claiming to represent youth. You know, it means it sends a message that they failed somewhere else and they're dropping down, you know, sort of like categories where they have a, you know. So I mean, as much as I'm not a fan of, you know, demanding quotas, I think 50-year-olds, you know, 50-year-old youth leaders, and it's a bit too cynical, you know. So I would agree with that, you know, the fact that that's not, you know, that doesn't help anything.
I mean, I'm in agreement with him. The idea of someone being 50 and over saying they're a young person, but maybe it becomes a conversation about putting a cutoff mark when we're talking about youth representation in Nigeria, which is not something that is present. So that is one question to ask.
Let me just show everybody at home what I'm looking at on my computer here. It's a minimum age to run for office. So if you want to run for Senate, you have to be 35. If you want to be in the House of Representatives, you have to be 30. No way you can be president of Nigeria without being 40. So, George, if we go back to these sort of age restrictions that are in place right now, 35, 30, 40, why wouldn't you want your politicians to be experienced?
Experience is good, but what we've seen in Nigeria is 99% experience and 1% innovation. You know, why we're asking for the young people is to have it balanced. You know, if we had these innovative young people in the system, I mean, they can change things. They think, the young person thinks around the clock, but the old person, I'm not saying they don't think, but the young person is very, 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 he wants to explore, you know, and that's where innovation comes from.
But even that point about experience, sorry for cutting in, I'm 35 years old. I've been working since I was 18 years old. The kind of jobs and responsibilities I've held, that 17 years is equals to someone who was born in 1960 or 1950, because like the world has changed. A 25-year-old person who finishes from school by like age 20 and works in a multinational for 4 or 5 years, and it's like 25 years. That 5 years experience is the same kind of experience somebody who was 50 years old, who grew up in a time where there was no internet. There was a time where they couldn't, you know, like they didn't have the opportunities we have right now. So the young people have the experience. Let's put that thing about experience out of the window. You know, first of all, we have the experience. I've been working for 17 years in multinationals in different places. I have this experience.
And if we're talking about innovation in Nigeria, if you look at the tech sector in Nigeria, a lot of it is youth-led. A lot of the companies that people are looking at and as the future of Nigerian innovation and business and enterprise, they're youth-led. So the idea of you don't have experience because of age is one that's ridiculous, because I have a feeling that if we look at a lot of the resumes of the people who are leaders, I wouldn't say that they have the experience either.
Well, Uche, you know, you said that you've had the experience. We are seeing online a slightly different example, really. Noel on Facebook says, most policies in Nigeria are self-centered policies that guide age to citizens. Employees must have high working experience before being employed, but unemployment is on the rise. So some are saying there are barriers to getting some of that experience to then being able to enter public office. What would those barriers really look like?
The barriers really are financial. I mean, I was telling someone like some minutes ago, for example, I want to run for governor of Abia State. I'm being asked to pay over almost $100,000 for a nomination form. How will a young man get $100,000? I mean, I intend to crowdfund for my campaign from donations from PayPal, credit cards and everything. But I feel very bad asking people, fellow young people, donate, give me some money so I can give a bunch of politicians $100,000 in bulk. What are they using that money for? Why should the nomination form be $100,000? Does it make any sense?
Okay, what are they using the money for?
Oh, very good question. I wish if I knew what they're using the money for and I could justify the money, trust me, I'll give them the money. I don't know what they're using the money for.
Right. So, George, I'm just looking here at 30percenonnothing.com. So this is where the hashtag campaign then goes online and onto an actual website. And you're getting an incredible amount of web traffic. But when we're looking at, it's not just about age, though, is it? It's about money. And then there's other factors as well that makes it harder for younger people to get into politics. Is there an overall issue there with maybe the older politicians not wanting younger politicians to even come into the system?
Yes, if you're young and you talk to the older politicians about your ambitions of contesting, they just look at you like you're a child, as in you're not serious, as in you don't even know what you want. They feel like politics in Nigeria is like for retired people, you know. It's just like for old people who have finished working, they're retired, and then they want to look for something else to do, and it's not supposed to be so. It's for vibrant people with ideas, passionate people who want to make a change. I mean, you know, so, but that's not the whole ideology about politics in Nigeria. This is what we want to change.
No, sir.
If we're talking about Nigerian culture, and I think a lot of African culture, youth are to be seen and not heard. The opinions are discarded very frequently. Even in your household, it's like, who are you to talk to me? Age over, you know, anything else. And so with that, it prevents people from going in and to be taken seriously. Also, we have to look at the idea of what are politicians actually in office doing? Are they serving people? Is it a place of service or is it a place of self-service? It's so, while I'm in agreement with the idea of getting young people in, it's getting the right young people in. So if someone goes through the political parties that currently exist, are they going to be corrupted just as the older politicians are corrupted? Or are they going to come in with their own ideology, and will that ideology actually see the light of day?
Let's talk the actual quota idea here. What are you trying to do with the quota, George? How would it even work? 30% or nothing. So that means that if you don't get 30%, that you want young people to what, boycott the next 2015 election?
No.
Well, politics is about negotiation and then trading places for different things, you know. The young people have the number, and next year's election to a large extent will be determined by the young people, you know. So because they're not represented, they have just below 1% representation, and the average young person is separated from the Nigerian society. They have no place in the Nigerian society.
All right, so the quota though, I get that, I see where you're coming from, but how is a quota going to actually work?
Let me give you a few suggestions.
Yeah, go on, Oche.
Ali, okay, there are two types of positions we have. We have elective positions and non-elective positions. Now, non-elective positions are a very simple thing. They're executive decisions. The president can wake up at one morning and say, you know what, 30% of my cabinet are going to be young people, 30% of the ministers I appoint are going to be young people, 30% of the people who head parastatals are going to be young people, 30% of the ambassadors who we send abroad are going to be young people. Now, there's the different aspect about political positions, elective positions, which becomes more difficult. They can do simple little things. For example, the nomination form should be free. Why should we pay $100,000 for a nomination form? Let people who are under the age of 40 have free nomination forms. Right. For example, in the PDP, People's Democratic Party, they have a system where they send people to Congress. For every ward, they send 3 people. Out of the 3 people, 1 must be a woman. Make it 5 people, but after the 5 people, make 2 of them be young people who are between 18 and 40 years old, because they never really look at their age, birth certificates or passports. They send any kind of person. Send 2 young people from every ward to Congresses. So when we get to the Congress, which is like a delegate system, we know there are young people who can vote for young people. Right now, if I run for election and I go to a Congress, I most likely will lose, unless all the older people feel, you know what, let's feel sorry for this small boy. Because there are no young people in the Congress.
This small boy.
The young people in the Congress, I mean.
You know, Femi talked about credibility, you know. I wanted to say something. You know, some of these people in these political parties, they run their private companies. They know how to get good hands. You know, you want them to use that same skill. They run companies. In their private companies, they do well. They get good hands. You know, we want them to tap into the 70 million young people, get good hands, and bring them on board. This is what we're talking about.
You know, George, we are seeing criticism, though, of the movement. And of course, it's not just a movement online. It's a movement that started before the hashtag. But Nafio says, he calls it a band of opportunists. Every election season in Nigeria comes with its band of opportunists, and the 30% or nothing hashtag is one such. So what do you say to criticism like this? People who say that once young people enter politics, they'll be just as corrupt as those who are there now.
Well, criticism is very welcome. It makes us sit down and think back and reposition ourselves, But I think the young people are doing well in other fields, and we can see it all over the world. They are adding value to different places, private companies, and the only place they are not adding value is their own country, and this is bad, and this is what we're talking about.
I will have to disagree with that.
Sorry,
in the last elections in 2011 and the elections before in 2007, there was about a 23% turnout rate for voters.
Right.
Last elections, there were a lot of young people leading charges. They may have been online efforts, but we saw a rise in the amount of people that came out to vote. The electorate came out to at least 50, if not 60%. Even if this is something that is online, and even if it's something that people say it's not to be taken seriously, it's going to spark a movement. So people who are online who say that it's not going to do anything, well, we could either sit back with our arms crossed and not do anything, or we could actually do something and spark some kind of change, as little as it is. It's not going to be a one-day effort. It's going to be something that goes over a long period of time.
And then as Nigerians, I am Nigerian and Malika is an honorary one just for today, we love to talk about our political leaders. We love, it's like a national pastime. But if you just talk about it and you don't do anything, that is more problematic, right? All right, Feyi, what did you want to add?
Yeah, I was going to say we can't ignore the cynicism. Is justified to an extent. We are still the country of Daniel Kanu, and youth earnestly ask for Abacha.
Sure.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, and for our international audience, the notes for that would be what?
So I mean, when Abacha was trying to morph into...
This is General Abacha. All right, I'm not going to let you throw out the names without a little bit of context here, Feyi. So remember, people watching around the world.
Yeah, so when General Abacha was trying to morph into a civilian head of state back in '97 or something, he a group of young people came out led by a guy called Daniel Kanu, and it was so a very, very truculent kind of movement where they were saying things like, we're going to kill ourselves, we're going to starve ourselves to death if Abacha didn't, contest as a civilian head of state. And he came up with this group called YEAA.
See, I don't understand your point. That was 1997.
Hang on, I'm coming.
He was a military man.
I'm coming. All
right, so Feyi, we only have a limited amount of time, so make your point swiftly, because I know Uche wants to take you up on it. Okay. Go ahead.
What I'm saying is that 30% or nothing has not dropped into a vacuum. Right? There's a long tradition of things like this happening, whereby whenever elections are close, a group of people tap into a pain point and then come up with a movement, and then, these movements get, they inevitably, they never reach the destination.
What was the movement? What was the movement in 2011? Tell me what the movement was in 2011. Tell me what the movement was in 2007.
Off the top of my head, I remember adverts saying Nigerian youth will soon laugh out loud. I remember stuff like that.
That's just an ad.
Yeah, I remember stuff like that.
But that's an ad.
It was an ad.
Anybody can. For example, we saw the distasteful ad about bring back good luck 2015. That was distasteful.
I remember launch with GEJ.
All right, so we have. All right, so we have some cynicism from Feyi. Feyi is just saying, "I've seen this before. This is not going to work." Uche, how would you respond to that?
I really don't understand what he sees. This is
he doesn't believe that this is a real movement. He said, I've seen young people say we want representation before, nothing's happened. Why would something happen this time?
Okay, Feyi, what I tell you is to go to a website which I found at campaign.ng. We have competent young people who have shown capacity in the past. Campaign.ng, yes. We have a bunch of young people who are committed, and they say, you know what, I want to run for office, I want to commit my resources, I want to commit my time. These are people who are tested. We don't even just put anyone on campaign.ng. You fill in an application, we have some form of interview, we go through your credentials, we see whether you can add any value to the table. These are young, good people. Have you looked at that? Have you looked at that motion, that movement? Have you looked at all that?
I have.
Oh, you have? Okay, and so what do you think about the candidates then? About the aspirants? I don't even candidates, the aspirants then.
I know a number of them. What I'm saying is, it is not as if this is an umbrella You know, there are things that are happening in all different kind of places. What I'm saying is that if people are cynical about the movement, about 30% or not, it is justified. That's what I'm saying. It is justified because there's a long tradition of things like this happening.
Right. Okay.
You know, I mean,
we hear your point. I'm going to move on just a little bit, Faye, because some of the community want to join in the conversation too.
Well, Femi, I will let Faye know that you're not the only one that thinks that. There's online here on Twitter, Salahuddin said, innovation or not, where are the youth-driven parties and initiatives by the youth? Though I think Uche just mentioned where you can find some. So, Nosa, I want you to address this next tweet from Chelsea. She says, this has to start with youth participating in politics by belonging to a political party, which is in a vehicle for political power. Are there parties open to youth?
All the parties have a youth kind of umbrella or movement, but what do those movements actually do? What do the umbrella youth movements mean for those parties? I mean, if we're talking about a simple quota of we need to have a certain amount of young people in these parties, they can select any youth. They can select their kids. You know, what is that? What kind of criteria are we using to select the youth? I don't think they will shun them away. Will they actually implement the ideas that they give? That's left to be decided. I'm not sure that would happen. So I mean, that is a possibility, but you have to read between the lines when it comes to Nigerian politics. While they say it, doesn't mean they necessarily mean it.
Which is a good point to actually head to my laptop here, because this is President Goodluck Jonathan. This is what he has said. If General Yakubu Gowon was able to rule this country at 32, there is no reason why the youth should not be given the chance. So don't ask for a percentage, because by that request, you are limiting yourself. So it sounds like you've got some support from the president, except that General Gowon was, he took power. It wasn't like there was a quota and then he was overthrown when somebody else staged the coup. So there's a slightly problematic there.
I don't think that's an era Nigerians want to return to. Those who remember that period of time when Nigeria was ruled by young people, we had all these guys were young people.
These were young dictators.
Exactly.
Right.
Eventually, I mean, they took the country to the brink. So I don't know if that's...
I'm not sure that was the best example, but the idea that the president is behind the idea of young people coming into politics, George, does that make you feel like, I'm not just yelling into a black hole here?
Well, it's a good thing that he's speaking out against it, and he's listening and he's hearing what we're saying. And this is what we want. We want the other parties to take a cue from that, come into it. There's so many young people under their umbrella. They want to come out, you know, but, you know, it's not enough for the constitution to say 30 years you can contest. It's, for example, we can say, okay, once you're 10 years old, you can become a billionaire. How does that happen? When you have the constitution, you need to come and check, is it working? You understand? You say 30 years can contest, but 1%, you just have 1% representation for the young people. You need to go back and say, okay, how do I encourage people to increase their participation in politics?
It's a really good piece of PR, what he just put out. I mean, they're aware of the youth participation. They're aware because the last elections, there was a flood of outcry from youth based on either rigging or whatever. So they're aware about how important the youth is to the next election. So it's a great piece of PR to say, the youth should be included. But what exactly are you going to do to make sure the youth are included? Quota, what the quota does, and I'm not behind the quota, just to be clear, but what the quota does actually forces a certain amount of young people to be considered, just like Uche or George were talking about a certain amount of women to be included. So, but the thing is, the quota can't stand on its own. It has to stand with criteria, because if we have young people going into the machines that are our current parties, the PDP and ACN, what's to say that they're not going to be corrupted?
Right. Malika, what are you saying? Guests, hold tight for a second. We're coming to the end of this part of the program. I take you all to stream.aljazeera.com in the post show. But before I do, we just check in with Malika.
Well, Nosa mentioned that this quota can't stand on its own. And so a tease for the post show, My Lagos Pride tweets in, what would have been made more sense would have been for those who don't agree with the 30% or nothing to come up with alternative ideas.
Okay, so let me tell you about the next program before we continue with the post show. Now, making sure that your child receives the best possible education is a struggle for a lot of people, but even more so for parents of special needs children. So here's the debate. Is it better for them to be in specialised classes or maybe integrated into traditional schools? We'll be having that debate with parents from both sides on the next AJ stream. Stay with us. We're talking Nigeria and young politicians and aspirational young politicians at stream.aljazeera.com. Thanks for watching. Hello, this is the Streams Post Show where we're talking about how some of Nigerians' young people are pushing for a greater voice in politics. So still with us, we have Nosoriama Garrick. She is co-founder of Vote or Quench. In Lagos, we have George Ali, founder of 30% or Nothing. That's a hashtag calling for a youth quota in government. In Abuja, Uche Chuta is an aspiring politician, and in London we have Feye Fawakimi. He's a blogger. So Feye, I heard you just piping up at the end there of our main show. What did you want to add?
No, I mean, I saw a tweet saying something like, you know, people who disagree with 30% or Nothing should come up with alternative ideas. I think it reflects the arrogance of this movement that thinks it has dropped into a vacuum. Like, you know, as if there was nothing happening before, or young people were just sitting down somewhere, folding their arms and waiting for somebody to launch a hashtag for them. I mean, there are things happening. You know, there are young people thinking, there are young people constantly, it's a pain point. You know, so if you're saying whatever has made you think about the fact that
what's the visible representation of young people in politics? Can you tell us the visible representation? Please tell me very clearly what's the visible representation of young people in politics.
Okay. Let me answer your question.
All right, so I heard the question. Everybody, be quiet just for a moment, so I can hear Feye actually respond to the question. George, hold tight for a moment. Uche, hold tight for a moment. All right, hold tight, everybody.
I'm tight.
Wow, we have Nigerians in the house. All right, Feye, what did you want to say?
No, so he was asking a question, for example, about, you know, visible representation. Now, you know, first of all, you started with 30%. You haven't set a baseline. I know several. I mean, I'm talking about several. I can count off the top of my head around about 10 special assistants or special advisors to ministers in this current government who fit this bill of young people.
But they're assistants, Feye, right?
I said visible.
Sorry?
I said visible.
No,
how is an assistant visible?
Yeah, but you already made a definition. Uche, you already made a definition saying, you know, there are two categories. You already said there were two categories. You already said there were elected and they were appointed.
Appointed.
You already said they were
elected. Feye, I want you to understand something.
Appointed positions.
All right, so gentlemen, let me just ask you to put this on pause for a moment, because I actually want to hear George. Go ahead, George.
Yeah, Feye, I want you to understand something. Those SSAs you see representing those politicians or whatever, they are actually people who, it's not based on merit, it's based on who works for them, and this is what we're talking about.
Not true.
Listen to me.
No, that is not true.
You think they do it on merit?
All right, so Feye, this is my turn to ask you to put it on pause for a moment. Let's so I can hear George. Go ahead, George.
Did they throw it out to the public? Did they collect CVs? Did they look at other people? Did they compare? Did they say, okay, bring 5 people, let's choose from them? No. They just pick the person they want. And most times, that
doesn't mean the person is not qualified and is not on merit.
Well, you know, when you talk of fairness, in a party, if you have 100 people work for you, you can say, okay, let's get the best 5 for this particular job.
Because that makes it pure nepotism. And then if you're not giving people a chance to...
You said there are things that are on. Okay, tell us one thing that has been on and how long it has been on and the result it has gotten. Tell us about it now.
I already told you that off the top of my head. I mean, I don't even live in Nigeria. I already told you that off the top of my head.
But you said you know. You said you know. Tell us one thing that is on and what has achieved. Tell us here and now.
I'm telling you that I said there. I know at least 10 special advisors.
Tell us one. Just say one that you know about and tell us what has achieved.
You want me to mention people's names?
So gentlemen, I don't think Faye is going to name 10 people. So while we're having this conversation, we have reached an impasse. Hold tight, everybody, for a moment. I want to bring the community back into this conversation. I'm not going to hear 10 special assistants' names. I know I'm not going to hear them right now. It's going to be a long, long, long wait. So,
I'm not going to
exactly. Malika.
Well, there is another question here on Twitter. Uche, My Lagos Pride writes, unfortunately, most people fighting against 30% or nothing don't even know who their ward chairman is or what ward they belong to. Do you think that that's true of the younger generation, since you said that you were not of the youth, but do you think that they are involved civically even before we get to elections? Are there avenues for being involved in the civic society?
I mean, the opportunities, but do people take the opportunities? No. And because there's so much distrust in the Nigerian system, distrust of the political system. See,
Uche, this is what worried me about you, and also made me happy that you were on the show, is you look at the system, you look at how politics is run in Nigeria, and yet you want to be a politician. Why?
I mean, I have no choice. Like 4 years ago, a friend of mine, Amara, like he kept on disturbing me and calling me and telling me, look, you have to come back home. I said, come back home to do what? He said, to work. And I came back home and it hasn't been a walk on ice and everything. It has been very difficult. But I did the difficult work and I can see that Nigeria has problems. The generation coming up don't have any role models. We didn't have any role models. We didn't have anybody who mentored us. No one mentored us. We have to mentor the upcoming people. There's a big gap. They have no one to aspire to be. People who are older, they had the Nnamdi Azikiwe, that Wallowers who can say, I want to be like this. Now, who do you want to be like? No one. We have to be those role models. There's a responsibility on us for those 25-year-old kids. For my younger brother, who I never knew was interested in politics. He's all the way in university and he's so encouraged by what I'm doing. But I never seen him watching TV about politics or anything. He keeps on playing Nintendo or PlayStation, but he's interested. But he has no role models.
To go back,
we have a responsibility.
To go back to Malika's question about if people know who their ward, head of their ward is, it's factual that people don't know who's running. They don't know. They don't have any information. The politicians don't give any information. Right. They give very blanketed statements of, I'm going to change your lives. Right. They buy votes. That's how it works. So it goes back to the point. It goes back to the point of when we're talking about quota, it can't stand on its own. You have to educate people, because then even if we have 30 people under the age of 35 running for elections, how do they know about them? How do they know what their platform is? How do they know what the needs of the people are? It's not just saying, let's get people under 30. It's saying, how do we educate the youth in general to know what their rights are, who they should be voting for, and why they should be voting for them?
I'm just going to wrap this up, and I'm looking at your Twitter page here, George, and it says here, please tell your neighbors that young people with 0 naira and a dream can become leaders. This, to me, knowing Nigeria, feels to me like you are maybe dreaming too. Why is this not a fantasy that you have going on? 0 naira and young, and you can be a politician. How is that even possible?
That's where the power of bargaining comes in, and this is, we want to use what we have. We don't have money, but we have numbers. We are 75 million. In the next election, if 30% of the 75 million people can get their voters card, that is enough.
Right.
That's why we're telling them, go ahead.
I need you to help me get those voters to register in Abia and vote. But it's very
for you, Uche. Who vote for you?
It's very difficult.
You see, Uche, why they are not registering is because they are not seeing young people they can connect with.
But the thing is, like, the idea, okay, so back to the idea of $0 in a dream, let's be real with Nigerian politics. It's about how much money you have to get the awareness out. Social media is cool and I love it, but it's not enough. People have to be on the ground. People have to reach out to youth, and you need money to do that. Femi, we can't go
the whole idea
$0 is enough.
People to come out. When the young people see young people coming up for positions, you understand? If you see a poster, even if you see his poster, you'll be like, oh, this person is contesting. Okay, let me get my card. You know, young people.
So you're basically poking them. You're poking them to be aware.
Ali, don't make it too easy. There's a big problem in Nigeria.
It's not easy. No one has said it's easy.
No, wait, hold on a second. We have the PDP.
It's not easy, Uche. It's not easy.
Hold on a second. I cannot normally get the ticket for PDP. It is not possible. I will not deceive myself. It's very difficult, almost mission impossible. My only chance
when you go alone.
Smaller party.
Yeah, Uche, when you go alone, it's impossible.
Party, I need money. I need money to sell a smaller party. It's not possible. You have to like market it as like a new name, some random name, and a new political party. It's a very difficult thing.
People need to be realistic about what the realities on the ground are. I think a lot of the suggestions that are being made are ones that work in an idealistic society, and that is not true of Nigeria.
Right. It's going to be interesting. We're going to be watching the elections with great interest to see how many young people are actually even on the tickets, are able to actually contend. We'll be watching. So I have to say thank you to Nosa, to George, to Uche, to Faye. This conversation is not over yet. We could probably take it online. Hashtag AJ Stream Malika.
Where it is continuing. So I'll end with this tweet from Frankar, who says, right now, with the current situation in Nigeria, the youth have to start from somewhere, and this quota is a starting point.
So thank you to all of our guests. I always enjoy doing Nigerian shows. On the next show, make sure your child receives the best possible education. That can be a struggle for many people, but even more so for parents of special needs children. So, is it better for them to be in specialized classes or maybe integrated into traditional schools? That is the debate we'll be having with parents on both sides of that conversation. I will see you next time online.